I'll mute his, there we go. And Captain is on. Not sure who that is. There's Ricardo. Hello, Ricardo. Glad to have you on. That's is that yours? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. All right, glad everyone's on. Everybody can mute your mics unless you're going to talk. That would be great, so we don't catch any of your back noise. Yep, we're just going to wait a little bit, a couple more minutes, and let people come in and settle down. So that's good. All right, we have MC. Not sure who that is, but that's good. Oh, that's good. Awesome. So yeah, so as we're waiting a little bit here, I'm just going to let you know how this call is going to go. We're going to talk about selective service a little bit later here. Now, this call is our weekly call that's on our Destination Freedom page. This link, this is on the go-to meeting. We're doing that, but simultaneously, we're in the studio using our Riverside platform, and so we are recording tonight's call, and so you can choose whether you would like to. Uh, you're certainly welcome to talk, and I'll be sensitive to the other. We're going to make sure that the other broadcast can hear. If not, then we're going to repeat the questions and things like that. If you want to type them in, uh, we are. I don't believe we're recording the go-to meeting unless we bring that up. If I end up doing sharing my screen, we may do some of that. So just to let you know, in case you have any concerns, we'll do that. Um, and again, if you have any trouble with your mic or whatever, you can always pop out and pop back in. Sometimes that'll fix it. You know, if you're happy with machines and computers, it's it's always something. So, well, welcome to Destination Freedom, and we're glad you're here. And um, in the studio, Um, Michael is here and he is holding down the fort and doing all this broadcast. We're hope to do this more often so we get really good at it. And what we are really good at is helping people eliminate their federal income tax liability. So that's what we really want to help you with. And tonight, um, we're going to talk about selective service. Now, if you have joining us for the first time, we try to do these calls every week on Wednesday night. Usually, if you're a client, we'll have a client call at about 6:30 for about an hour and a half or so, and then we go into this live open call, which anybody can come on that wants. And we usually will get people. Sometimes we'll get people from Australia, the UK, Canada, things like that. But I did want to mention that tomorrow morning, that would be Thursday, that would be the 13th of August. We are doing a live call, an international call for, well, for anybody, but that's a body of people from the, again, UK, Australia, Canada, who are also looking to eliminate their income tax liability. And there's principles about that that we'll get into in that call. And we talked about it before, but sometimes people either don't remember or um, it's the first time they're on that kind of call. So we want to make sure that you get that information and if we can help. So there's that. So tonight I want to talk about selective service. And uh, And I remember years ago, I think I had signed up for selective service. I don't remember. It's been such a long time, um, but if you look up, this is what we this is what we say to our clients. I remember a client in our one of our last calls was talking about a particular real estate transaction or something, or she's filling out a particular form, and she was wondering, how she might handle that. Or she said that, she was wondering if paperwork that we've used before, can we just use it over here? And so I said, rather than um, make that determination, you might ask yourself, rather than just go online and say, can I get out of doing this thing? See, that the nature of that kind of question is kind of like looking for permission. And so when you're securing your liberty and freedom, you're not looking for government to give you permission. And one of the principles that we like to say to people is government might say, we have three choices: choice A, choice B, and choice C. Just because government says there's three choices does not mean that's all the choices that there are. There may be other choices. So don't be limited or expecting your government to give you permission on something, because generally speaking, if you're looking for permission for somebody, you are placing responsibility of figuring out things on them. And I'm just going to let you know ahead of time, look, the answer is going to be no. So if you don't want that answer, don't ask that question. The best questions to ask are ones you already know the answer to, because you're looking to inform them what you're intending to do. The most powerful position you can say to anybody is, here's who I am and here's what I intend to do. No one can argue with that. That's you assuming full responsibility for yourself. So getting to selective service, in the past and over the last number of years, um, usually when a child comes of age and turns 18, that's, from 18 to 25, that's when selective service wants these young people to sign up and to go, to, in essence, to volunteer to go to war on behalf of the elite pedophiles. Well, that's who's running the show today. And so if you don't want your child being sacrificed to Moloch, on behalf of a foreign state and their wars, then selective service may not be for you. And so when someone was asking me about selective service, I what I wouldn't do is go online and look up, let me learn about selective service. That's not the first thing. And again, if you type in selective service, you can look at the websites. I'm not looking for what government thinks about selective service. So I may say, okay, there's a government site, or who is this, or whatever it is. I'm looking at the email, I'm not sorry, the websites and who's talking about selective service. Where I'm going is Cornell Law. I want to read the statute and code for myself so I can see what it says. That's all that matters, is what they're imposing on you, not what somebody thinks or feels about it. Generally speaking, when dealing with selective service in the past, they've never used the threats that are in the statute and code. And typically what's in the code is they allege that it's a crime not to sign up. Now, let me just say this for principle, okay? If you committed a crime, the government's not going to come to your house and say, will you sign up to go to jail? They're going to impose it upon you. You don't have to sign up for things that they're going to impose upon you. But if they need your agreement, if you have to sign up, that's how you know you have a choice. Now, they may say that if you don't sign up, there's a consequence. And just because there's a consequence, they may even use language like may. You may be guilty of a crime of this, that, or the other thing. And I think with selective service, it's like a $250,000 fine and 5 years in prison, or both. Now, when someone reads that, they're afraid and they don't really know how things work, and so they may just go ahead and sign up, and that's the intent of the threat. And if the language used may or whatever it is, maybe it uses shall or whatever. And just because there's a statute that would prosecute somebody does not mean that they will prosecute. They could prosecute, but it doesn't mean that they are. And so that may show up in some capacity. So again, what selective service, if you see them on like in an ad and things like that, typically what they say is, if you don't sign up for selective service, you won't be able to get these certain benefits, like government jobs, or you might not be able to get certain government-backed welfare, or or loans that are backed by the government, or whatever certain benefits. You might not get certain benefits if you don't want to sign up and die on behalf of a foreign nation, you know. And but principally speaking, where's the righteousness in the warmongering that's going on today? Here's what I believe. If you have a righteous cause, you will not lack men showing up to answer the call. But these aren't righteous causes coming out of the swamp. Okay, you cannot have a righteous cause coming out of an unrighteous swamp. Doesn't work that way. There's some of the worst people on the planet coming out of DC. They're warmongers, and they do it for financial gain. And there's a foreign nation that's occupying the District of Columbia, and they want American lives to be lost on their behalf, on who they determine, their neighbors, who they determine and make up as a threat. And I was talking to my brother. No, I wasn't. No, I was talking to my friend Greg, where I was talking about. Um, he was on a freedom platform one time, and he was asking the question about, we as freedom-minded people, who do we determine is our enemy? And when you're dealing with tyranny, where are the lines you're going to draw, determining who my enemy is and how far will they go? And someone on this particular platform, I don't remember what it was, he was telling me the story, was that they said that um, not going to allow you to speak on this platform if you're talking about harming government people. Well, just to let you know, the Second Amendment is intended for government fucking people. It's not about hunting, folks. Somewhere we got to at least be able to talk about it. Now, am I suggesting killing an innocent person? No. But a tyrant and those who support tyrants are not innocent. Understand. If a government is unjust and they are harming people, it's a crime, folks. And you have a right to defend yourself. That's the right. There's no right to own guns. Okay? No such thing as that. The right is much more broad than that. You have a right to defend yourself without exception. And whatever the force coming towards you, you have a right to defend yourself with that without exception. Understand, there's no limitation. Shall not be infringed means that. Now, in our work that we do at Destination Freedom, you have to understand that state citizens, the citizens of the states, are not the federal 14th Amendment citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So when I looked up the statute and code that governs selective service, the first thing starts off and says an individual. And listen, selective service comes right out of Title V. And Title V in the Code of Federal Regulations, or U.S. Code, deals with the government and the application of government. So really, selective service is showing up right into government entities, which is perfect for the federal citizen. The federal citizen, that's the 14th Amendment citizen, is subject to the jurisdiction thereof, including executive orders. The president is able to order federal citizens. But free people, the citizens of the states, have no such liability. The Constitution protects people from that. The federal citizen is not protected by the Constitution. Well, how do you say that, Chris? That Christopher, that the federal citizen is not protected by the Constitution. Well, because the Constitution says so. In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, gives the federal government exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever. Just read it. In the 10 square miles, which is Washington, D.C., they don't have, excuse me, they don't have constitutional limitations in their jurisdiction. The Constitution says they have exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever. That's very broad. So the idea is those that are in government, that includes that 14th Amendment citizen, and it also includes resident aliens. Most aliens in America most aliens are not residents of the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, America, Samoa. Most resident aliens are not, because they're not residing in the District of Columbia, or they're not residing in the United States District of Columbia. Okay? But when they're signing up for immigration and all those statutes and codes, they're coming into the District of Columbia by filing things according to immigration in the District of Columbia. So again, you have to understand that federal citizens have an obligation to sign up for selective service. State citizens do not have that obligation. Okay? And you might not believe or know that there are two types of citizens in the United States. And in our classes, we'll show you those federal court cases that show that there are citizens of the states and citizens of the District of Columbia. Matter of fact, in the Constitution, Article 4, Section 2 says, it says, the citizens of the states are entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Before there was a 14th Amendment citizen, there were only state citizens or citizens of the states. And they're the ones that had the states create the federal government by the Constitution. But the 14th Amendment citizen is that citizen subject to the jurisdiction. They have that obligation. I'm going to see if I can, let me see if I can share my screen. Let me see if I can, that's not showing up. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can, that's not showing up. Let me see if I can, no, that's not going to be it. Oh, that's not, let me see if I can share that part of my screen. I'm just going to show you, here we go. Let me see if I can, if that's going to show up. All right, here we go. Now I don't know, we'll find out if, okay. Oh, great, now I can't navigate it. All right, well, yeah, you can see it. I can pull it up on my screen now. It's just going to be a show you a second. So in, when you're looking at the selective service, it starts off at the top here being an individual. That's an individual who was born after blah, 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 and or was required to register under Section 3 of the Military Selective Service Act, and blah, blah, blah. So it starts off talking about the individuals who it who is affected by this selective service. But in title, this is Title 5. If you also go to Title 5, it also says records maintained on individuals. The term individual means a citizen of the United States. That's a 14th Amendment citizen. How do we know that? The IRS and the State Department both say that it's a 14th Amendment citizen or an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence. That's who the selective service is for. So that's so I wanted to show you that. Let me just go back to our call here, and all right. So let's just drop that down. All right, let me stop sharing. So that's what I want to show you. The simplicity of it is whenever you're dealing with a statute or code, always get to whom correct. That's the way we handle when, I mean, I learned this years ago when I started studying the Bible and learning that not everything in the Bible is written to everybody, that there's different people that it is pertains to. You have to be that sharp, otherwise you're not going to understand it. Well, law is the same way. It defines who this particular law applies to. And so that's what we do here as well. Selective services for U.S. citizens and resident aliens. All right. So that's the same people who have an income tax liability. And this is one of the things that we do with Destination Freedom is we help people make those changes and that they can stop being the federal citizen that they're always agreeing to be. And that we do this process with the State Department because the State Department handles passports with respect to the citizenship, and we reject that 14th Amendment citizen and embrace the citizenship of our state, which is based upon habitation and domicile. And so that's how we define state citizenship, habitation, domicile. You want to move to Texas? You can be a citizen of Texas. There's no forms to fill out. You'll cut off your driver's license from the previous state and you'll get a new driver's license. That's habitation, domicile, not residency. You can reside somewhere. You can reside all over the world. That's temporal. Okay. That's transient. Residency is transient. It's not the same as habitation, domicile. You can't vote in every state. You can't have a driver's license from every state. You cannot be on a jury in every state. You're in a particular jurisdiction, and that's habitation and domicile. So we help you do that process um, and and navigate the space so that not only you can choose to not have your family be in selective service, but that you can also eliminate your income tax liability. Thank you, Mr. O. He asked the question in our chat here. How long does the process take to complete? Well, we have about a 2 week backlog for clients that we're serving at this point. Uh, usually it takes us about a week to turn around paperwork once you sign up. But our process is actually quicker um, than most passport process. The State Department takes 10 to 12 weeks to do a standard passport. If you expedite it, it's 4 to 6 weeks. Our process without expediting is about 4 to 6 weeks to do the passport process. I don't know why that is, but we've had clients get passports in 3 weeks. Once they get the passport booking card, we then will do a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, where we'll get certified copies of your passport file signed, wedding signature by the Secretary of the United States, which right now is Mark Rubio. So he signs off on the documents, and then that will be your proof that that you've let the federal government know that you're not a federal citizen and have a tax liability. After that, we'll show you how to navigate workspaces. Um, uh, we don't, our clients aren't doing employment. We'll show you how you can freelance, do your own work, things like that. You have to be responsible for your own taxes, if any. And so you're not going to give that authority to a corporation to withhold on your behalf. That's not what our clients do. And again, we have clients from all over the world do these processes, and we'll help you get started and get set up that way. Um, we have a lot of support for our clients when they're doing business and things like that. So anyway, but yeah, so if you're concerned about your child signing up for selective service, then you might choose to not be a federal citizen. Now, when I say giving up that citizenship stuff, I'm not talking about expatriation. That's a different thing altogether. What you have right to, you never have to give up. Okay. And so a state citizen is not a federal 14th Amendment citizen. And that's how it plays out. And the Constitution and the tax code supports that. We have a class, we call it State versus Federal Citizenship, the Unknown Choice. We have a 6 hour class that will go into this in great detail so you can understand it from the tax code and read it for yourself. It makes sense. Then you can understand how federal gun laws are constitutional because the Constitution gives the federal government the power to regulate firearms for U.S. citizens and resident aliens. And in the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, those federal territories, not in the states. If you're a federal citizen and you're in the states, you still are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Federal gun laws apply to you. And today, as the federal government encroaches on the liberties of people, um, they're pushing back, making that slavery, if you will, a kindler, gentler slavery, so that they'll, not rise up. Because damn well these days, let me tell you, the worst thing the federal government would have is to wake that sleeping giant. It's not going to go well for people. Uh, and that's part of what creates freedom in the world is the fact that Americans in their own country, if you will, if they're in the states, are armed. That's not a little thing. That's a huge thing. Okay. And so nobody wants to square off with that. I promise you that. Uh, but there's somehow, what's the line? Or, how much tyranny will, Americans take? Remember Frederick Douglass? He said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you'll have found the exact amount of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those in whom they oppress. My word, do American people have a lot of endurance? Heck yeah, that's bad. That's not good. So, this is where we are. And now they want to conscript our children into fighting unjust wars. Not going to happen on my watch, not with our family. So, it's unfortunate. And I think what happened recently was Trump did an executive order moving the age, I think, from 25 to like 34 or something like that. They raised up, want to take in more young people into their unjust wars. So that's sad and unfortunate. Well, let me open up this call to any questions about our process or any questions about selective service, anything like that. And Michael, if you can watch, I don't know, are we live on YouTube or no? Okay, so watch for any comments that are on there. You can just reach, if they are any comments that come in, I'll be glad to answer them. So, Ricardo, glad you're on the call. Um, go ahead and ask your question, and I'm glad I can. The statute says females don't qualify. Yes. Yeah, that's what at least that's what the statute says, that females don't qualify. If you look up the statute in Title V, it'll give exemptions, and I believe exemptions that you're active military, um, that you're Where the how unjust is that? And that just tells that this is why men make $1 more an hour is because of this. Anyway, but no, I think you'd have to show your birth certificate. It's like, uh, let's see. So I guess they would qualify. Trans men, I think, do qualify because they're looking at your birth certificate. So bummer, bummer. There'll be more Corporal Clingers in the selective service. So, but no, I mean that's what those are some of those. But really, the idea is if you really want to help your granddaughter, not only not qualify for selective service. And look, we don't know these days. Maybe they would want to make those changes and all of a sudden start inviting females in. I don't know, but I read what I read in the statute before that was an exemption. But you can eliminate your granddaughter's liability for taxes all her life. If and what we recommend is that young people before they come of age, that you're preparing them to own their own business right at the beginning, not at the end of their life. In essence, retire at the beginning, and so that they're making money independent of their time. You don't want to prepare your children for um, for employment. You don't want to prepare your children for the workforce. You want them to be the ones that own the means of production. So, MC asks the question. Okay, sure, no problem. Thanks for being on the call. MC asked the question. Um, Oh, I shouldn't say that. Sorry about that. I think this is, I apologize for that. I realized it was private on here, but I'm going to read the question anyway. It says, my son is dual enrolled in local university as a high schooler, but just turned 18. The state says he must be enrolled in selective service to receive the benefit of free tuition equivalent to 6 grand. We're in the process of becoming, um, yeah, I mean, if, you would have to show that he's not a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. And again, the statute's going to govern, not what people make up about it. But that organization may say that they only want to make the benefits available that tuition. Um, and here's the thing too. Let me make up a suggestion for you. Okay. If the tuition's 6 grand, here's my suggestion. Have your son write up a letter and invite all your friends, your business colleagues, and say, listen, I don't support warmongering from our government, and I'm not going to qualify because I'm choosing not to sign up for selective service. And so my tuition is $6,000. I'm endeavoring to raise $6,000 for my education, and I would be glad to pay back any money that you would like to support me for that tuition. Or if you'd like to gift it to me, I will be glad to stay connected to you through my entire education and inform you on how good of a job I'm doing. And I can promise you that I will give my, I mean, imagine enrolling your community in supporting his education in that way. I would highly recommend that. You'd be surprised at who your business colleagues or people that support that kind of a stand would support financially. I promise you, you'd be surprised who in your family, friends, colleagues would support that. And so, um, not worth it to give up your life for what, $6,000 worth of benefits for school. School isn't worth that. But yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for your question. Um, I'll have to remember what chats are private enough. So, um, yeah, that's cool. I love that you're dealing with that, and we're glad to help you with that. If you become a client, um, and Selective Service comes on and writes and says we need you to sign up, we're glad to answer that letter powerfully, legally, saying that your son does not qualify. Your son also can do his um, passport process showing that he's not a federal citizen or resident alien, doesn't qualify as an individual based on the statute and code. So, hope that makes sense. All right. Um, any other questions for this evening? All right. It's a quiet group tonight. Yeah, there's somebody. There you go. Dustin. Go ahead and just ask a question. Oh, yeah. Well, Ricardo's raising his hand, but yeah. Whoever wants to just go ahead and speak up and go for it. Go ahead, Ricardo, if you like, if you're answering the question. Yeah. That's a good question. So the question was is that if I'm doing the changing my status in the middle of the year, do I have an obligation for last year or the beginning part of the year? Well, here's what I would ask is at any time did anybody ask you if you'd like to be a federal citizen or a state citizen? One has an income tax liability and the other does not. Did anybody ever ask you that years ago or at any time? Okay. Well, what I would say, what I'm making up about you is that maybe you've never been a federal citizen. Maybe you've filled out paperwork poorly. Maybe you didn't ever look up and see who really had the tax liability and why and looked into the law or any of that stuff. So, what I'm making up about you, and again, I can't say this for you, but maybe you've never had a tax liability and you've always filled out paperwork badly. And now you're going to make that change. So what I'm making up is maybe you've never owed it. And that's the way many clients will tell the IRS. After a legal consideration of I've realized that I have filled out previous forms in error. I've never had a liability not being a U.S. citizen or resident alien. And you would do that, right after you do your process. So that's how I would that's one of the ways you can consider. And again, it's not for me to say this is what you would do because it really is for everybody's particular place. Some people are glad to say, all right, I'll pay this last bit here, cut them loose, and then I'll do my process and then I'll be clean and done. I don't have to mess with anything. There are people that do that. But that's not for everybody, but that's for some. And everybody gets to make that choice on their own. Does that make sense? That's cool. Sure. Thank you for your question. All right. Well, okay. And again, if you want to interrupt me wrapping up or whatever, just by all means jump in. Don't hold back. Looks like there's some mics open. So if you have a question, you can certainly raise your hand, or you can just speak, and I'll repeat your question so that other people on our broadcast will be able to hear and understand it. I'm thankful that you're on, and we do this every week on at this time, 8 o'clock, unless something comes up. Generally speaking, we try to do this live on Wednesdays. Um, what I was going to say is if you want to know more about our process, you can go to destinationfreedom.org. If you like the content that you're viewing, then please, by all means, like and subscribe and pass it on to your friends and people that you think would be interested in our work. We're delighted to hook up with people and to help them and let them navigate the space. You don't have to be alone. We have a lot of support. There's a whole community around people that do the same thing. And just so you know, although there are people that have had IRS issues that come into our community that we help with. Not one of our clients is having any trouble with IRS that have done these processes. They may be dealing with stuff they've had set up before that they have to change and make those changes, but we're not being pursued by anybody with the IRS. And the reason is because we agree with the IRS. The IRS believes all U.S. Who has a tax liability is all U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, and resident aliens. And so the question is, which type of citizen are you, state or federal? And we like to help you navigate that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you see us on YouTube and you want to ask a question in the comments there, we'll do our best to get back with you. Or listen, if you ask us a question on a channel, we can catch that. Then show up on our next call, and we'll endeavor to answer those questions live on the air for you. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I thank you so. Oh yeah, go ahead. Uh, No, no, don't be apologized. I'm here for you. Sure. Oh yeah. 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 Can you? Sure. Of course, you can always sue and litigate if that's what you want to do. Um, Truthfully, we don't recommend it because generally speaking, listen, the IRS is not going to help you stop filing. They're not going to assist you in these regards. Okay. So we tend to say that we want to be left alone. And so that's really where we go. I don't recommend it because you're talking about wanting to litigate that. Listen, you signed every one of those forms under penalty of perjury as true and correct and complete. The IRS is a victim of your own testimony. So, if you want to try to overcome that, I don't recommend it. So I do get your sentiment. And I feel that way. There's a certain level of fraud in this, of course. But again, Americans are filling out these forms under penalty of perjury as true, correct, and complete, even though the IRS is ultimately going to tell you whether it's true, correct, and complete. That's the environment we're living in. So yeah, so no, I don't recommend that, Ricardo. Yeah, sure. But good question though. People feel that way about Social Security too. But and again, there are legal remedies and that you can pursue that if you want. But again, people don't know. Like for example, when people talk about that they think Social Security is owed them, I just ask, have you read the 1935 Social Security Act? No. Okay, then, you're just going along with the tradition of things. I mean, can you imagine suing an auto dealer over what what the salesman says when your contract is what's binding. And listen, if you read an auto sales contract, you read in there, it'll say what the sales guy said is not binding on this contract. So, you know, that's a reality. And many things that are sold with salespeople have those kind of disclaimers in contracts. So, you know, buyer beware, or, you're expected to know what your rights are. The government's not there to, they should be. The only just government's one that secures rights. So, but the government's not your friend. Okay. The government is force. And that's sad to say, but that's the reality in the world. All right. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate everybody, and I'm glad you're on. We'll see you around next week. Hey, I'll tell you what's going to go on next week. I'll have Greg Linlin, who is a good friend of mine in New Hampshire. He usually is living in Belize, and he's been on our Destination Freedom Telegram group. And we have a destinationfreedom.org Telegram group. You can join that if you like. And so he comments a lot. So we'll bring him on the show next week, and he can, he can share what's up with him and how he feels about things. I think you'll find it very spirited. Okay, so look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much for being on the call tonight, and we'll see you next week. I'm Christopher Gronsky. This is Destination Freedom. We'll see you next time.
Life to pass away, but life presents such possibilities each and every day. I heard a calling that was right for me. I prayed for strength for what's ahead of me. Show me the sun rose high and burnt the night away. Who stood before me was my enemy. Don't tread on me. He's come to take away my liberties. I'd rather die than be a slave to thee. Don't treat me this way. I'd rather die than be your slave. I will survive. And you feel my rage. It's not a question of being brave. I'd rather die than be your slave. Didn't matter who shot first that day. They killed my brothers.